And we're turning now to Haiti, where an earthquake Saturday killed hundreds of people. Vlad is reporting from the capital, Port-au-Prince. Good morning, Vlad. We know that Haitians have been saying when they've been asked about the calamities that they have had to deal with over the years, that there is a saying that they use. What is that saying?
Laura, Haitians here in Haiti have a saying which I've heard over and over again whenever they're faced with and asked about the calamities that they've suffered throughout the course of the last couple of years. And that saying is, Deyemo, Gemo. Beyond the mountains, there are mountains. And that is something that Haitians have become all too familiar with. As we now know, there are 1,300 people that have been killed in this earthquake, and we know that that toll is most likely going to rise. In fact, the ambassador to Haiti told us, the Haitian ambassador to the United States told us that his latest numbers had it at about 1,700 and climbing, and thousands more injured. And so this is something that Haitians are all too familiar with. And on top of that, Laura, they're dealing with the incoming weather threat. Tropical depression Grace is on its way here.
It is a state of emergency here. A nation crushed under the weight of yet another natural disaster. Hospitals are overwhelmed by incoming patients as rescue workers search for survivors under mounds of concrete and debris. In the destruction, there are brief moments of hope, like this woman and a young boy being rescued from the rubble of a toppled building. The epicenter of the 7.2 magnitude quake is about 80 miles west of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The coastal town of Lekai was one of the hardest hit, and its hospital is at capacity. A private plane is flying patients to Port-au-Prince. It's a striking blow for a country that still hasn't fully recovered from a series of natural disasters. A devastating earthquake hit in 2010, where an estimated 300,000 were killed. I spent nearly a month reporting from Haiti immediately after and witnessed the horror that Haitians faced.
We need more people down here!
C'est où ta maison?
In 2016, we came back after Hurricane Matthew leveled towns along the coast.
We understand the dire situation we are in, but the most important thing is we will come out of it.
Rochit Edmond is Haiti's ambassador to the U.S. He says the rebuilding effort will be an arduous one, especially after the assassination of Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse last month led to even more instability. But he says Haiti's interim government needs to step up and rebuild a stronger nation.
We cannot avoid any earthquake, but at least when the earthquake comes, there will be better resistance of those buildings and every other infrastructure, so they won't collapse like a house of cards.
Another saying in Haiti is emblazoned on the national flag, and it embodies what Haiti has stood for since it became the first black independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. Union fait la force. In union, there is strength. And Laura, Haitians will need that strength more than ever in the days and weeks ahead as Tropical Storm Grace threatens to bring mudslides and complicate relief efforts. Earlier, I spoke to Dennis Clancy, who's the Director of Operations for Team Rubicon. This is an NGO made up of military veterans that deploys to hard-hit countries facing natural disasters like Haiti. Here's part of that conversation. So you've deployed to numerous disaster zones, including Nepal back in 2014. For our audience to understand the scope of what happens when an earthquake crushes a city, a village, a town, one where infrastructure is not in the best of shapes, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so you called it out. The main thing is how good is that infrastructure? And when you have a country where people can't necessarily afford to fortify their buildings, it comes down to what time of day is it when it occurs? Are they sleeping in their homes? Are they in their offices? And that ends up really driving the number of casualties and crush victims that you see.
And one of the things that Team Rubicon has done on the ground many, many times subsequent to the 2010 earthquake in Haiti is deploy not only experts like yourself, but also teams of doctors, of nurses, of medical professionals. One of the things that we know in Haiti is that where this earthquake took place, the epicenter in Jeremy and Lekai, is quite a distance away from Port-au-Prince, about 90 miles, but the roads are impassable. There's either banditry on the roads, or they're not passable because of the earthquake, mudslides, and rocks and debris that have fallen on the roads. So how critical is it for you to get your team of doctors into the epicenter?
Absolutely. We're primarily looking at air transportation. The important thing is after you leave a disaster, you need to keep those relationships alive so that when you come back to that country, you have a good network. We have a good, solid network between partners here and the local populace. And so we have an option, and we'll be in Lakai today.
So the doctors and the nurses and the medical professionals that you have with you, what are they prepared to do? What kind of medical equipment are you bringing? And ultimately, you're going to do a lot of triage on the ground there, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. The team that goes in today, when we fly later today, will have the stuff to get started. We have a team that's already being prepared to follow in behind us as well. We have the best trained medical professionals from medical systems throughout the United States. We have people from Boston. We have people from Raleigh coming in to support us. They're focused on specific scenarios like this, in environments like this. We have emergency care physicians and the like. So we have a broad swath of medical providers that are ready to come and help.
Now, I know this is Haiti, and it's going to be perhaps different than what you experienced in Nepal, but earthquakes, when they happen and when they strike, and when people are hurt or killed or crushed by them, generally follow a pattern. What did you see in Nepal that has given you a good sense of what you think is going to be critical and job number one once you get on the ground there?
Yeah, our main challenge as a humanitarian organization, first, we're looking to apply where there's the greatest need. And it's finding that balance between those population centers where you can have a building with many stories, with those kind of unheard of small local towns that have people with just as much need where it's maybe not getting the same attention. So finding that balance is critical early on and making sure we get to those patients quickly.
How difficult is it for you also when you're, during the 2010 earthquake, one of the things that I saw is there were a lot of people that came to Haiti to help, and it was welcomed, but sometimes there can be cross purposes because the humanitarian rescue teams are sometimes better equipped than some of the Haitian hospitals. So how do you deal with some of the traditions? How do you deal with the local population so that they know that you're on the same page or on the same team?
For one, we look to integrate with them, right? There is an existing healthcare system here in Haiti. You can criticize it, but those medical providers know the conditions here best. And so we'll always look to see, is there an opportunity to decompress those medical providers who are here during the earthquake, right? Who need to take care of their families right now. We'll look to be shoulder to shoulder with the providers that are here because we recognize we're part of a bigger effort. It's not just about Team Rubicon.
So Team Rubicon, and for our audience who doesn't know, Team Rubicon was born in the wake of the 2010 earthquake. Just give us a sense of the origin story. Jake Wood, who's a former United States Marine,
yes.
He came out to Haiti in 2010 to help, and what he saw and compelled him to create and launch Team Rubicon.
Yeah, obviously after the 2010 earthquake, the scale of devastation here was great, and 8 people raised their hand. They knew they weren't part of any existing organization, but they knew they had some value to provide, and that's really the foundation of Team Rubicon. Military veterans, they take off their uniforms. That doesn't mean they don't have a desire to serve, and great skills for scenarios like this, and that's a spark that's really helped Team Rubicon to grow over the years.
Yeah, you yourself, your story, let's talk about that. You graduated from West Point, you served in Iraq with the 101st Airborne Division, and you started out at Team Rubicon as a volunteer before you transitioned to full-time. Why did you decide to make that transition?
What better mission to help people on their worst day? I was at the Nepal earthquake in 2015, loved the organization, just its commitment to purpose, that camaraderie of the military, and it's no better organization to be part of.
Yeah. So give me a sense of what you're doing today and what you expect you'll be doing over the next couple of days.
Right now, my medical providers are going through all the gear, making sure we're set because we have a flight to Lakai. So we'll get in there today and look to start helping patients immediately. We already know where we need to look. We have a couple areas where we know that there's unmet need, and we're just going to get to work.
Are you partnering with anybody in this mission?
We're talking with everyone. We had NGOs on the flight yesterday with the team coming in. We are talking to all the government-related agencies, and so we'll make sure that we're integrated in this so we're not duplicating efforts.
All right. It's really, really great to have you here, Dennis. I think people in Haiti are going to be grateful for the support that you and Team Rubicon are providing. We'll be following and tracking along your progress. Stay in touch with us so we can see how you're doing and come back and talk to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Dennis Clancy. He's the operations director for Team Rubicon. Laura, as you just heard, they're going to closer to the epicenter. We're about 90 miles away from the epicenter right now. They have a very, very difficult mission ahead of them. If one of the things that we talked about in the 7 a.m. hour, Laura, is how ultimately the images that we're seeing coming out of Haiti today mirror the images that we saw with our own eyes back in 2010, and how sad that is. In the course of the last 11 years, that Haiti has been either unable or unwilling to get in shape to prepare for another natural disaster like this. I'm going to take off my mask, Laura, so you can better hear me. And so that's where we are. And so, like back in 2010, there are numerous humanitarian groups that are coming in to Haiti to help, and it's a commendable effort. But one would think at this point that the country would be better prepared to deal with an earthquake, in addition to this looming weather threat that the Haitians are facing. And the answer is that we're really not there yet. Haiti is not there yet, Laura.
Well, certainly our eyes are on and our hearts are with Haiti as it deals not only with this humanitarian issue and the 2010 earthquake and this earthquake, but also the political strife that it's been going through with the recent assassination of its president, with everything it's dealing with COVID-19, and now, as you mentioned, with this tropical depression that's headed its way. So we will be following the latest with you, Vlad, and we'll be following the latest throughout the day. You can also check out Vlad's 2016 CBSN Originals documentary, Haiti, A Homegrown Recovery. And that is on the devastating earthquake that crippled Haiti back in 2010 that we mentioned, and the aid groups that mobilized to try and help the country. Groups like Team Rubicon, which you just heard from during Vlad's interview. So you can stream the documentary through our website and on the CBS News app.